thanks for joining me today. What I am going to show you is a new lever arm belt squat setup for your power rack. So if you don't have a dedicated belt squat attachment or belt squat setup, this is really easy to do. There's a little bit of setup time, but once you get used to it, it's pretty easy. The best thing to do is you're going to need both lever arm weight horns. I'm going to walk you through this entire process and how I set everything up. So you're going to need a crescent wrench, you're going to need a socket wrench. There's a few other things that I've got. If you don't have, it's not a big deal, but it might be something you want to look into if you really like to perform belt squats. So I'm going to walk you through the whole process here now. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to take your lever arms down if they're not already. And then you're going to need your crescent wrench and your socket wrench, and you're going to have to take the weight horns and the handles off of these. I'm going to use this lever arm for my belt squat. So I'm going to take this weight horn off and this weight horn off, and then I'm going to connect them together. Okay, so I've got both weight horns off, and I have my single lever arm here that I'm going to use. So the next step is I'm going to take these weight horns and I'm going to connect them to the lever arm. Now, you can decide where you're going to locate them. I use them a little bit closer so that I can get some more top load, and it makes it a little bit more difficult. So the closer you set the weight horns to the actual base of the lever arm, the easier it's going to get. So you got to find a perfect medium for you that will work. Where I'm going to go is I'm going to go the 6th hole from the top, and then that's where I'll place my weight horns. Alright, so now I've got the weight horns set up. I've got a nice T-frame there. The next set is I got to set the lever arm at the correct height. Now for you this is going to vary. Now the thing that's a little bit annoying, especially with Titan Fitness, this is the X3 power rack, flat foot power rack. The one thing that's pretty annoying is the fact that I don't have holes every marking point like I do on the other side. So I have to take my power pin off, and I'm going to set up my lever arm. I go right where the west side spacing starts. I go from the 2nd hole up. So I can't use a power pin there. There's nothing that's actually connected to it, so it has to stay unconnected. Now I've done this enough to where I know it's not going to affect anything, so if that's a concern for you, then maybe this is a deal breaker. But other than that, you know, I've done this enough where I know it's going to hold, and it's going to be just fine, because you're not really pulling up enough on it, because you're only really doing a small range of motion, so it's really not a deal breaker. So once I have the location of the lever arms, the next piece is now to actually start setting up the rest. Now, on the top of the post there's a cap. You have to pop the cap off to get access to inside here, because you're going to connect your belt squat, your belt, to the inside of the post. Now there's a few other things that I use as well to get everything else set up. So I use some toe chains, and I use some power pins and power pegs from my company, Bear Steel Equipment. So these are the power pegs. Now these power pegs, they've got magnets on the back end of them. So this is a 30-pound pull. and they're 10 inches in length. So after on a 3x3 rack, you've got 7 inches of usable length. So these things have been really great, much better than some of the other standard tractor pins and everything else that you use. So this is the tool of choice that I use to set up. So the first thing I'll do is I need to set up where my chain is going to go, my tow chain. So my tow chain is going to go right here. I grab my belt and I'm going to set my chain up here. The other power peg is going to be connected to the bottom or the top end of the lever arm. Now what I've got to do here is I have to connect my belt. I have to snake it inside and then just weave it through. And then I've got my connection here. Now, you can use a power pin, you can use a power peg to connect. It's really not a big deal which you use. I'm right now training with chains, so I'm using the power peg so that I can actually connect the rest of the chains on that. So that's one reason I'm using that for the extra length. Now, before I finish doing the connection here, I have a dip attachment. And the dip attachment is for the handles. And so this is one of the areas where you may not necessarily need. I know a lot of people will train without a handle. I like the handle, so I've used that as an added piece. And when I go to connect this, that's where I use the power pin. So I use the power pin to connect the dip attachment. And again, the dip attachment should go somewhere where you think it's comfortable. Then the last thing you need to do, take your tow chain, lift up the belt squat, and now you have it connected. So now everything is set up. So I'm going to bring it in here so for a closer look. So you can see, so there's the belt connected inside. Got your power peg here that's connected with the tow chain. There's your weight horns connected with the dip attachment, connected to the power peg. And so then once you get into the belt, you've got everything set up. You've got a little bit of slack there. And then all you'll need to do is release the chain. And then I always connect it back up to that top power peg there. So it's really an easy setup once you get the hang of it. Doing it the first couple times it'll take a little bit of time. So the one downside is really setup time, but outside of that, it's actually pretty easy. So I appreciate you hanging out with me. If you got any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments. So I appreciate the time, and we'll see you next time.